All right, multiplying decimals. You are going to open up to the fourth tab in your decimal operations booklet, the hot pink one, on the multiplying decimals tab. And we're going to take some notes first, and then I'm going to show you some practice problems on the back of this page first before we do the practice problem at the bottom of this page. This is going to be tomorrow's lesson. So we'll just take the notes here, and then we'll fill out some problems on the back for you to have as a reference if you need it. All right, so biggest thing when we're multiplying decimals to remember is a lot different than the biggest thing to remember when we're adding and subtracting decimals. If you remember, adding and subtracting decimals, you have to line up the decimal points no matter what. That is the biggest thing to remember with adding and subtracting. So these two pages up here. Okay, line up the decimals vertically like it says up at the top. Multiplying, you don't need to worry about it. The biggest thing you're going to do is you are going to line up the last digit. Okay, so that's the biggest thing you have to worry about. Right now, you're just going to multiply without worrying about the decimal yet. So we're going to line up the last digits, not the decimal points, but the last digit in each number that is being multiplied together. We're going to multiply as normal, and then we're going to kind of ignore the decimal points for right now. We'll come back and add them in later. So when we do, we're going to count the total number of decimal places in the factors, which if you remember, those are the two numbers that are multiplied together. So 4.5 and 0.23 are both factors. Place the decimal point in the product, which is the answer to a multiplication problem. So whatever we would get for the answer down here would be our product. These are our factors. A factor times a factor equals a product. Using the same number of decimal places in the factors, and we're going to count from the right. Now, a lot of this is probably going to maybe be a review for some of you, but right now it may sound like gibberish. Let's flip over to the back. Let's do a couple practice problems first, and then we will be referring to the notes you just took. They may make a little more sense to you here. So problem number 1, I would like you to write 0.8 times 6. So right now we are just worrying about multiplying decimals by a whole number. Okay, so we're going to ignore the decimal point in one of our factors in this problem, but we're going to line up the last digits of each number. So I have 0.8. I'm going to write the decimal point in there, but I'm going to kind of ignore it. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to see it just for right now. So notice how I lined up the last digits in my problem. So now I'm going to multiply just as normal. 6 times 8 would be 48. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. Okay, so now I know that my answer will not be 48 because I know that this is less than 1 and then 6. If I were to multiply a number less than 1 times 6, I shouldn't get the number 48. So we multiplied as normal. We ignored our decimal points and every digit behind the decimal point just for right now. Now that we have our product, we're going to go back and we're going to count how many digits are behind a decimal point in our factors. Well, if you look in the whole number here, 6, we know that our decimal point would be right after the 6. So we don't have any digits after the decimal point. We can ignore that part right now. We do have one digit, and I always like to put a little line underneath that digit after our decimal point. So you're going to find the decimal points in the problem. You're going to count the number of digits behind your decimal point. If you were to have multiple digits behind decimal points in both of the numbers, you would add these numbers together. Right now, our total is just 1. So then, once we have that information, you can maybe even write 1 over here if you need to. I know that I'm going to start on the right, and I'm going to assume my decimal point is here. Okay, just right off the bat, I'm going to assume that's a whole number 48. But now with that number 1, or however many digits you have behind the decimal point, we're going to move that decimal point in our product that many places to the left. So that means that I am only moving my decimal point 1 spot to the left. So now I have 4.8 as my answer. And now that should make a little sense because this is about 1, a little less than 1. If we multiply that by 6, I should get roughly around 6, but I know that this is less than 1. I rounded up. So my answer is going to be a little bit less than 6, which 4.8 is a little bit less than 6. So 4.8 would be my answer for that. Let's try another one. Problem number 2 on the back. Let's do 1.9 times 5. So again, I'm going to line up my last digits of my factors. So I'm going to just put them in as normal times, but then my 5 is going to go underneath the 9. Now, when we were adding and subtracting, the 5 would have gone under the 1. But here, we're just lining up the last digits. We're ignoring our decimal point for now, and we're going to multiply as normal. So 5 times 9 would be 45. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. And now I don't have any numbers over here in this spot, and I'm not going to fill it in with the 0 and multiply by my zeros because that's going to kind of wash out once we were to add the zeros on. So we're done multiplying for our problem. Now I'm going to count how many digits are behind my decimal points in my factors above, which again, I only have 1. So I'm going to put a little 1 here so that I remember to only move it 1 spot to the left. So then once I multiply this, I know that my decimal point should start on the right-hand side of the 5. Okay, so I'm going to assume that it's a whole number. I ignored them up here, so all I know is that I'm multiplying 19 times 5. But now that I have 1 digit behind my decimal point, I'm going to move it 1 spot to the left, and my new answer becomes 9.5. Now, if you were to go back and double check to see if your decimal point is in the right spot and if your problem makes sense, you know that 1.9 is pretty close to 2. If you were to multiply 2 times 5, you should get around 10 as your answer. Well, I know 9.5 is very, very close to 10, so I know that my answer is probably okay. If you were to get different digits here instead of a 9 and a 5, maybe it was just a simple mistake of multiplying wrong or adding wrong. So that would be an easy fix. But our decimal point and where they are in our product is our biggest worry right now. Okay, one more problem for you in the back. This one's going to have a few more digits in there compared to these problems up here. So I have 2 times 0.037. Okay, so now what I always do is no matter what number is bigger or smaller, I always put the number with the most amount of digits in it up on top, just like I did up here. This had 2 digits, this had 1, this had 2 digits, so I put that on top. This had 1, so I put that on the bottom. So I'm actually going to put 0.037 on top, and my 2, because we line up the last digits in each number, not our decimal point, would go underneath my 7. So again, I ignore my decimal point, and I just multiply as normal. 2 times 7, 14. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 0, 0. So I know my answer is not 0074, and I know my answer is probably not going to be 74. So that means I need to count how many digits are after any decimal points in the factors above. So I see 1 digit, 2 digit, 3 digit. Okay, so that means I need to move my decimal point 3 places to the left in my product. So that means I move it once, twice, 3 times. My answer is then going to be 0.074. Now, if you had a 0 at the end of your digit with your decimal points in it, you do not have to count that as a digit behind the decimal point because that doesn't need to be written. That's going to add in one more extra round of multiplying here when everything's said and done. And normally the problem itself or the original problem will not include that 0 at the end. If it does, you can ignore it. If you have a 0 in the middle of your numbers though, those need to be kept in. You can't get rid of those. You can't ignore those. Okay? All right, so you have these 3 practice problems on the back. The one on the front is multiplying a decimal by a decimal, and that's actually our next lesson. So we're going to ignore that problem on the front for now. Once we get to that next lesson, we will go back and solve it. Okay? If you have any questions on this, I know you guys have worked on this in the past in grades before 6th grade, but if you have any questions on this or would like more practice, please reach out to me. Your homework is page 197, problems number 1 through 4. in page 199, problems 18 through 20. I will have those written down on the assignment in Google Classroom, so you have those written down and you can see them. But you have a couple problems, about 5 problems, 6 problems that you're doing for your homework after this. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to pause this video and go back and rewatch parts of it. I will also have an extra practice worksheet attached to this assignment in Google Classroom that if you want more practice, you're more than welcome to do it. Even if you just want to do 2 extra problems and not a ton that are on the page, that's totally fine. But don't feel like you have to do it. I always want to offer it in case you need it. Okay, so that's what the extra worksheet is going to be that's attached to this assignment in Google Classroom. But right now, your homework problems are just the ones in the book.